Jacob Kersey. He's the 19-year-old police officer who was forced out of his position as a police officer in Port Wentworth, Georgia, for posting the biblical definition of marriage on his personal Facebook page. Well, I asked you to sign the petition asking Mayor Gary Norton and the Port Wentworth City Council to issue a public apology to him, and you have responded. 35,000 of you signed those petitions, and earlier today, former Congressman Jody Hice and the Friday host here at the Family Research Council, one of our FRC team members, led a group of pastors to deliver those petitions to City Hall. And Congressman Hice joins me now by phone with an update. Jody, welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you, Tony. It was an exciting day. Very, very good day.
So first off, I do want to acknowledge that Mayor Norton is in the hospital, and you and the other pastors were able to take time to pray with him there at the gathering, had a pastor's prayer breakfast before you went to the City Hall. But I saw the video. You actually encouraged the staff there at the City Hall, saying that you were praying for the mayor.
Yes, we did, and quite frankly, I think they were touched by that. I thought they were probably anticipating a crowd that was going to be extremely hostile towards them, which we were anything but. Everyone was extremely kind and generous, and on a couple of occasions, like you mentioned, we took time to pray specifically for Mayor Norton as he is in the hospital right now. And just in sharing that information to Steve Davis, who was the individual I was speaking to at the time, he just paused and said, "Thank you very much. We really appreciate that." So it was a good encounter, both from that type of perspective of offering ministry and love to the mayor, but also bringing a message that the leaders of Port Wentworth needed to hear.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Before you went over to City Hall with those petitions to deliver them, there was a breakfast for pastors there in Port Wentworth. What was the reaction to the pastors, to the Family Research Council, and First Liberty, who joined us in this effort, coming into Port Wentworth on behalf of Jacob Kersey, who was forced to resign his position as a police officer for using his First Amendment freedoms?
Yeah, Tony, I've been to so many meetings like this over the years, both as a pastor and as a member of Congress and of just other opportunities. But I don't know that I've been to any meeting that was more profound than the one that took place this morning at the breakfast with a number of local pastors. The information that they received, we had one of the attorneys, Courtney Jones from the First Liberty Institute, who is defending Jacob, and she laid out the case. Jacob himself shared of what happened to him. Kelvin Cochran, who is the former Atlanta police chief, who was fired under similar circumstances a few years ago, he shared. It was just absolutely powerful. It was inspiring. It was encouraging. It was prayerful. And I believe everyone who attended that breakfast left with a sense of a tremendous awareness of what was going on, awareness of the fact that religious liberties in this country are under attack, and that Jacob has courageously stood up, which is remarkable. His poise for a 19-year-old is just tremendous. And so I thought the breakfast was powerful. It really set the stage for when we left there and went over to City Hall.
We're showing some video for those that are watching of the pastors there, and Kelvin Cochran was the one praying right over Jacob Kersey. Jacob was the one in the chair. Many people might not remember the story of Kelvin Cochran. He was the fire chief in Atlanta, Georgia, originally from Shreveport, Louisiana. He was the fire chief in Louisiana, was actually a member of the Obama administration with the one of the fire commissions, was in Atlanta as the fire chief. In his church, he wrote a devotional about, I think it was entitled, "Who Said You Were Naked?" And it was a story about Adam and about man and about human sexuality. And because one page within that study that was done for his church regarding homosexuality, he was fired from his position in Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, he had Alliance Defending Freedom representing him, and in Atlanta ended up having to pay because they wrongfully terminated him. But I think it had to speak volumes to Jacob to have Kelvin Cochran there speaking today and praying over him.
Well, it really did. And not only today, but last night we had dinner together with Jacob and several of us who were part of the events today, Kelvin being one of them. And Kelvin was able to sit right there with Jacob, and I was there with him as well. And just the interaction, the encouragement, the support, the wisdom, having literally been through the fire, as Kelvin Cochran had been through, and the love, the compassion that he was sharing last night with Jacob was just tremendous. And then you add to that what took place today. It really was just a remarkable time. And I think all the pastors and those who were in attendance were just taken aback, both at the seriousness of the issue, the courageousness of this young man, and what happens when we as believers stand up for religious liberties in this country. Most of the time we win, but we have to stand up. And that's one thing, Tony, that I was able to share. The 35,000 who signed the signature, they were standing with us today when we delivered those petitions. And I just want to give a huge shout out and thanks, heartfelt thanks to the approximate 35,000 people who helped us today deliver a strong and powerful message to the leaders of Port Wentworth.
Let me ask you about that, Jody, as you met with those local pastors, and, you know, they may not have understood the significance of this initially, but did it have an impact on them, the fact that there were thousands of Americans across the country that cared about what was happening in Port Wentworth when it came to religious freedom? Did that speak to them?
Yeah, I think it did, and quite frankly, I don't know how it couldn't. I mean, it was the pile of the stack of the petitions were behind us while we were speaking. Of course, we pointed it out to them, and I don't know, it was 4 or 5 inches thick, a pretty small print on every page, but that's what 35,000 signatures looks like. It's a lot of paperwork, and for everyone to just visually see that, it was powerful. And yes, there was you look at 35,000 signatures, but also the spiritual leadership there and the keen awareness that beyond the 35,000 was also the most important presence of God, who was with us in that prayer meeting, with us in the effort to stand for religious liberties and to keep wide open the doors of the gospel, both now and the future generations. There was a keen sense of awareness and responsibility that was shared, and I believe that the pastors called on to that.
And after leaving the pastor's breakfast, going to City Hall, other citizens joined you for prayer there in front of City Hall and for the delivery of the petitions. Is it your sense, Jody, based on your conversations with the pastors and with the citizens there in the Port Wentworth area, that this might spark something?
You know, I certainly hope so. I think, this is a highly touristy area, and so there's a lot of coming and going with people and this type of thing. I'm sure it's a rather difficult area for ministry from as far as local churches are concerned. And you could kind of get a sense of that with some of the pastors. But I'll tell you, when we all showed up at the City Hall, and there were a number of other local residents who joined us there, the energy just continued. And we were it actually started raining. So even in spite of the rain, people turned out. There was some local media who was there covering it as well. And we were all able to cram our way into the City Hall and present the petitions. It really was a moving experience, and I would dare say none of those people had ever experienced like that before. I believe they were extremely encouraged and appreciative deeply of the leadership of Family Research Council, and First Liberty going all the way down there to stand up for their local community in a very serious overreach of government discrimination and hostility towards people of faith, as they absolutely have done to Jacob. And the people just seem extremely appreciative, and they united with us in an effort to take a stand today.
Well, it's so important that we do what we can where we are with what we have to defend these freedoms, and the best way to defend them is to use them. Jody Hice, I appreciate you representing us so well. You and Dr. Mark Harris and the rest of the FRC team that were in Port Wentworth today. Thanks for going down there and being a part of that, and for joining us this afternoon on Washington Watch.
Deep honor to do both, Tony. Thank you so much. God bless.